What is this behind the rain off the Louisiana Gulf Coast? That's right outside of Houston. That is not rain. That is not how weather works. There are weird waves showing up on the radar. So again, we'll start with that.
That's the rain.
Goodbye to the rain.
And that.
What is this? So meteorologists have been sharing this on Twitter saying, what in the heck is that? So now here's how radar works, okay? I'm going to show you this. This is how radar works. The radar dome sends out a beam.
Yes.
It hits the rain. It bounces back. And it says that's rain. So it detects something. It detects something in the atmosphere. So after that rain moved through, it detected something.
Yes.
What was it?
Okay, Mario, what was it?
It was the mothership that I've been telling you. They are here, and they are loud and proud, and they are, I'm telling you, they are getting ready to make themselves known. It's all over the social media, but what I do love is that meteorologists are now seeing this and saying, something right.
What is going on with the WEF? I'm getting total villain, last boss type vibes. Make sure you stick around because you will not hear this anywhere else. We'll come right back to this stuff. Now before we get into the really crazy part, we have the WEF talking about implanting devices in Bluetooth headphones and other things for who knows what. And yeah, this is pretty crazy, but it gets crazier.
Wearable devices. So these are brain sensors that are starting to be embedded in everyday devices, but until now have been a number of niche companies that really have focused on mindfulness and meditation. The use of, for example, brain sensors that can pick up electrical activity in the brain at a pretty low resolution.
So y'all heard that, right? They're already putting chips in your headphones that can read your brain activity. We also just had Schwabi step down and this guy step up. But let's be real. Why do they want to measure your brain activity? What kind of electrical signals can they pick up from your brain? Do you see this behind me? Automatic machine for identifying blanks of blank from voice to skull. So this is a patent that fights against the other patent, which is the voice to skull. So I'm sure you're wondering, what is voice to skull? Well, it's technology where they can implant voices in your own head. You'll think it's you half the time. So I was actually going to get the voice to skull patent, then I found this one instead. If you want to look farther into it. TikTok does this picture, I'm sure they all have infections. So I've showed you in times past where they can literally read your brain from the camera on your phone using your eyes. And through that, they'll decode some electronic signature from your brain to know what you're thinking. Also now with your headphones, they can get that same exact signal. We also have AI being able to detect your location through walls. So long story short, because I'm just joking and I'm just giving y'all some fiction, theoretically, it would never happen. When voices beam to your skull, they'll know what you're thinking about that voice because your headphones or whatever else kind of technology. This all coming up when the last boss fight is stepping up and the new identification required to enter government buildings.
Scientists have just combined human brain cells with silicon chips.
Okay. Cameron does fine. It's better now.
Yeah, so this is where they live. So they get matured in an incubator.
Yeah.
Then they get plated inside that center portion there. And then we put them in this metal chassis. And this is what we call that cap, the metal cap. So we can see right through the middle. So we can image the cells using a microscope. This is input, this is output. And so if you trace it all the way through, input will come from one of these filtration units. So the way it's designed.
So for people who don't know, because we just spent a couple hours talking about the chip that goes in here.
Yes.
That has something like 800,000 neurons on it.
Right.
Biological cells.
Biological cells.
That are doing AI, not AI, but human intelligence. And it's on a chip. It's
correct.
Like, you're putting us into the Matrix. This is the Matrix.
This is the Matrix-ish.
Cortical Labs has created CL1, the world's first biological computer. It combines human brain cells grown in a lab with traditional silicon chips to create a smarter and more energy-efficient system. CL1 can learn and adapt faster than normal AI, making it useful for medical research, drug discovery, and robotics.
I mean, first, the hippie movement probably was to co-opt the anti-war movement that was pretty buttoned up. Like, yes. I suspect that LSD did not just escape the lab. I suspect they were like, quick, turn all these kids into crazy hippies. Like, try this out, try this out, try this out. Check this out. Have you read Strange Scenes Inside Laurel Canyon?
I started to read it. I have not finished it.
If you take that book's premise, it's basically that before the hippie movement, there was a very powerful organized anti-war movement led by a bunch of Quakers, a bunch of black activists, a bunch of, like, my dad was one of them. And it was not this hippie fringe thing. It was a very powerful anti-Vietnam protest. And the moment that LSD gets introduced, it becomes all peace and love. And he points out in that book how all of these people, like Frank Zappa, like lead members of the Doors, people organizing the Monterey Pop Festival, they all just happen to move from wherever they are all over the world into this area in LA that is not a hotbed for music. And they all just start making music about peace and love and doing LSD. And all of them have parents that are from special forces, intelligence operations, Pentagon,
like
overseas.
who in specific?
Like the lead singer of the Doors, Jim Morrison, for example. Frank Zappa's dad worked at the base that was like the chemical weapons, like where they did their chemical weapons research. His dad was a chemical weapons specialist with like top secret clearances, which is basically like, when you read about what his dad was, it sounds a lot like what MK Ultra would be.
When it comes to the Cabbage Patch Kids, have you ever wondered why they came with adoption papers? Maybe it was just more than some little cute gimmick? In my last video, I talked about how the orphan train shipped over 250,000 children across America. This all took place between 1854 and 1929 under the so-called Orphan Relocation Program. But here is where the rabbit hole goes even deeper. These Cabbage Patch Kids were sold as babies that you could adopt, complete with official paperwork. That being said, some people believe that this was a form of predictive programming, basically just mocking the actual true dark history that might have happened. Now let's actually think about this for a moment. In the orphan train era, kids were rounded up, stripped of their origins, and then sent to these new families. That sound a little familiar? Most of these kids were young enough that they were the prime age for indoctrination. Basically a whole entire memory swipe. It does seem strange, the idea of children growing from a Cabbage Patch, though. It's almost like they just popped up out of nowhere. Similar in the way that we don't know where all these orphans came from. Now, I'm not saying that these are clones, but I am saying that there's a lot more evidence for that claim than you might think. So was this all just one big coincidence, or just another twisted way of them putting the truth in plain sight?
So this is a sphinx that got covered in mud from Noah's flood. All these mud floods happened worldwide. It was the flood of Noah. You could see it push mud up over the sphinx right here. It dried like concrete. The sphinx is sitting on top of a whole entire temple right here. You can see where the sediment gets pushed up. Even on the steps, it came in sideways and mud wiped out this whole entire temple. These sphinxes are found all over the world, okay? Whether it's in Egypt, Greece, India. There's even one in the Grand Canyon. That's the Sphinx in Balo Christian that got flooded. This is the Sphinx in Egypt. This is the one sitting in the Grand Canyon. You can see the Sphinx had its head knocked off somewhere. It's probably buried behind it in sediment. That's a pyramid behind the Sphinx covered in mud. Okay? All these sphinxes and pyramids are sitting on top of that temples, the same temples that were in Balo Christian. See right here how that Sphinx in Balo Christian is sitting on top of it. That's going to be like your Greek and Roman ancient pillar columns right there that run across like a Colosseum. That's going to be another top of a temple right there. That's why when they excavated out the Sphinx in Egypt, they found all kinds of chambers and tunnels underneath, because that Sphinx is sitting on top of a temple. You see, this whole area got flooded out, but it pushed sand up in Egypt instead of mud. This is all water damage on the surface right here. 3 generations of stonemasons. The first thing I was taught to see was water damage on a stone surface. This stuff deposited sediment so thick that nothing's going to grow through it for thousands of years, okay? That's why you only see small brush and shrub growing through it, because it's literally concrete that dried. At the top, that's a temple on the other side of the Sphinx in Pakistan, okay? This is all off the coast of Hingol National Park. Right here on the bottom, That's a temple in the next country over for reference, because that's what got flooded, was an ancient temple. They line up perfectly.
You ever heard of the Council of 300? Council of 300 is basically what we would call the Illuminati, and it connects directly to the cult of the Black Cube. So this was originally written by Dr. John Coleman in the book called Conspirators Hierarchy, the Story of the Committee of 300. He claims that there's a shadow elite ruling the world behind the scenes, but there's multiple names for them. So it's Council of 300, also the Hidden Hand, or the Olympians.
Interesting.
300 top tier individuals that would be royalty, banking, dynasties, and corporate heads, including the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Windsors, and high-level Vatican officials. This is why people are like, well, this isn't real because there's no record of it. Of course there's no record of it. The ultimate goal of the Committee of 300 is the creation of the one world government.
Yeah.
One thing this Dr. John Coleman writes about is that the Council of 300, they use this thing called the
Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah, often reinterpreted as the problem reaction solution mechanism. So it's a mechanism used by the elites. So it's a 3-step process. 1, problem, a manufactured crisis, terrorist attack, pandemic, economic collapse. 2, reaction, the public's emotional response. So the public's like, you got to do something to save us. And then 3 is solution. So the elites pre-planned solution that wouldn't have been accepted otherwise. An example, surveillance laws, war, lockdowns.
So Pope Francis has just died on Easter Monday at the age of 88. Or did he? I have found a lot with this one, so sit back, relax, get your snacks, we're going down the rabbit hole. First, let's start with Archbishop Carlo, who actually got excommunicated from the church last year, and in this video in February, he speculates that the Pope may have been deceased already. And then there's this video from 2021.
Festive address focused on his prayers for the pandemic to come to an end. Said vaccines should be made available to those most in need. His death was announced. Excuse me.
Wait, hold up. Did she just announce his death prematurely? I mean, that face says it all. Then let's move on to JD Vance, who actually met him a day before he passed, and he says, I met with the Holy Father, Pope Francis. I am grateful for his invitation to meet, and I pray for his good health. Almost like he knew something, right? That same day, Trump posts this. He said, the golden rule of negotiation and success. He who has the gold makes the rules. Thank you. Then, right after that, then this happens. Gold surpasses its all-time high of 33.84. Now, the fact that the Vatican has a ton of gold, is this a way of Trump saying, hey, that's mine now? Now, being that the Pope died at 88 and 8 being the number of wealth, is this a changing of the guard, so to speak? Which it could be, because why did the Pope die on Queen Elizabeth's birthday? So that's not weird. Now, speaking of rabbit holes and Easter, Trump was actually visited by this brown rabbit at the White House instead of the traditional white rabbit that you would follow. Now, this is where it really gets spooky. So I decided to follow this brown rabbit and typed in Rabbit Trump in Google, right? And the first link that I got says 88 Trump Easter Bunny stock photos. Now, who just died at the age of 88? I am officially convinced that we're living in a simulation. And the cherry on top, the same day, the World Economic Forum's chairman and founder, Klaus Schwab, steps down immediately. If this doesn't signify a brand new day to you, I don't know what will.
The Rothschilds destroyed Tartaria. Please, let me explain. Their timeline is exactly the same as the reset. Take a look at this. If you look at the Rothschilds timeline, it's the same as the Great Reset in 1776. Look at this, guys. It's uncanny. When the Rothschilds were becoming established, it's exactly the same time as when Tartaria was on their downfall and the reset was happening. Has anyone ever looked at this? It's obvious, guys. Again, in 1776, it's the same timeline as the Rothschilds timeline. When they were coming into power, it was the same time as the Great Reset, guys, and the mud floods. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Also, this is the Rothschilds' humble abode. Look at the etheric technology on the top. I think they were a Tartarian family, and they took over, and they knew exactly what was happening, so they made a new world order. Also, the Rothschilds connected to the Oddfellows. The Oddfellows were in charge of all the orphanages through the reset, and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Bit weird, yeah? Also, the Rothschilds funded all the wars, and the wars were only there to destroy all of the old world architecture, guys. Ain't it really adding up now? Understand? And last but not least, the Rothschilds loaned £400,000 back in 1850s. Today, that would be 4.7 billion to the Catholic Church. Come on, guys. They took it from old world to new world, can't you see? And they also destroyed all of the world fairs.
Let's go over a few examples of movie studio symbolism, starting with Touchstone Pictures. This could be perceived a couple ways. It could be symbolic to the Western Wall, or maybe the symbolic reference is to the Black Stone. Either way, it's symbolism. Touchstone, a standard or criterion by which something is judged or recognized. And we know it's symbolism because you can see the hand touching the stone. Or how about Universal Studios being universal, having an image of the Earth, but then displaying the words into Saturn symbolism. Coincidentally, the black cube reference with Touchstone has significance to Saturn. Or how about the undeniable fallen angel symbolism with Paramount Pictures displaying the fallen stars and Mount Hermon, which is all referenced in the Book of Enoch. It's definitely symbolism. Or how about DreamWorks showing what seems to be as above, so below symbolism, and to have a guy fishing off the moon, of all things, and calling it DreamWorks, all in association with entertainment. I wish more people were able to grasp the depth of this type of symbolism. Another one that's pretty wild to have an association with entertainment, because Lionsgate is a reference to a portal. Are they letting you know what you hear and you see is like a portal? My answer to that is yes.